we've argued against an entirely hard engineering solution. We've taken some community action, remember, of burying Christmas trees, which is mimicking nature along the coast. And we've put our case nationally, as Christine has said, and we've managed to get national press coverage. So you shouldn't think we're a lone voice and nobody is listening to us. And we're not a lone voice either, because this is an issue that affects many communities in Scotland, some far worse than us. You've all read about the Break in flood in River Street there, but Simon and I have met people around the country whose properties are flooded every year, in places like Callander, in places like Brecon, in places like Perth, and the problems along the River Nith in Dumfries. That's a real issue for them. And the more that we collectively can say things, the better. I want to go through 5 issues which I think the council say one thing, the people that we've been listening to and we've been talking to in the town think differently. So hence what the council say, what Musselburgh folk think. I mean, they think that there's a high immediate risk. But the fact of the matter is we haven't had the mega flood since 1948. Thank gosh, Storm Babbitt didn't occur here, because that would have been a major flood here. So there is a risk. And as I say, other places are much worse. We're told that the money's going to disappear unless they approve this scheme at their meeting in January, and they're going to rush it through. They've got cash registers in their eyes, and I'll come back to that in a moment, to be perfectly honest. But what's the evidence? That the extra money in the government flood capital scheme is there till the end of this Parliament in 2026. And I know, because officials have told me on behalf of the Minister, that they are very concerned about the escalating costs of these schemes, and that they need to have a much sharper eye on the costs. The council said we scaremonger. Well, we were criticised for putting this sign up. These are my next door neighbour's kids, and their dad's here, and he said I can use this. These are their figures, but they want to all say, well, you're lying. And we say, well, these are the figures off your website by publicly funded consultants. And what do? Well, they pay for an expensive advert in the paper. This is what it'll look like at Pinky Pillars, you see, in their estimate of the flood. Well, isn't that scaremongering? And that's public money. And they accuse us of killing the trees because there's a wonderful group of ladies wrap things around them. Well, I don't know any silvicultural expert who agrees with that. Garbage. Next. What are the actual costs? Well, this is the definitive figure here, because Councillor Hampshire, the leader of the council and the chief executive, Monica Pattison, say that, so we must believe it, mustn't we? But we haven't any breakdown other than the new seawall will cost 50 million, and this scheme will be presumably the balance of that. But within that, we have no idea. Surely we, the council taxpayer, the ratepayer, etc., need to know that. And it's really scandalous bragging. We don't know the cost breakdown at all. And one problem that the government has made for itself is to believe engineers that you only solve flooding by capital schemes. So you build it once and you forget about that town and you move on to the next one for 50 years. Well, the world isn't like that for 2 reasons. One is we do not know I don't know any climate change scientist who can tell us what the climate change will be that will affect this valley of the Essex or the coast, even 10 years ahead. We've got areas of risk and uncertainty, but we don't know the figures. So why have you got a capital scheme that tries to solve something now? We need to have a much more flexible approach. But of course the council doesn't want to have anything that it's got to spend money on a year-to-year basis. Next one, please. we've been arguing for a long period of time for natural solutions. It's what I personally call natural common sense. I suppose I've been trained that for the last, I'm working on it for the last 50 years. Yes, 60 years. I'm that old. The council say that they've included these. Their only natural solutions are to use 2 redundant reservoirs and put a tree blocker just above the A1 on the True Estate land. That's it. We can do others later, but they've not seriously looked at this because they don't want to, because they have said they won't stop the mega flood. But all of these solutions we know will stop smaller floods. Why aren't they looking at it? I mean, this is being done in so many places now around the country. There are lots of examples in England. We've been to see ones in the Eddleston Valley, where there's been a huge, great experiment there. The consultants, of course, have a totally different view from us. They say, oh, but that's a terribly political catchment, whereas ours is 5 times bigger. But our catchment actually is at least 5 different catchments. It's not just one river, it's not just 2 rivers. If you think about the North Esk, it rises by the reservoir at the Broadstone, but there are other bits of the North Esk, like the Flotterstone Valley, for instance. So it's all separate little things, and the scientists tell me, well, we need to think about it at that sort of scale and then scale it up. But the consultants won't think about that at all. And I mean, at the coast, I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. In my youth, I tramped around a lot of beaches in Scotland and did reports for government agencies. And so when I read the report that they were thinking of building a 20-foot high dune from the sea mouth to the river mouth, I should say, to the harbour, I was thinking, well, that's totally unnatural here. There would never have been a dune like that in human history. There might have been in pre-human history, but not in human history. But of course they discarded all of that because it would need that many lorry loads and that much money. It's a waste of time. Well, they don't even understand these things. If you're going to do anything on the coast, you actually think about, well, could we build a barrier out beyond the river, about beyond the delta, beyond the low water mark? It would be artificial, but it's mimicking nature. And they've been trying this in Norfolk, for instance, where there's a real severe problem. But they won't think about those sorts of things. And last but by no means least is the hypocrisy of, on the one hand, the council saying, forget nature-based solutions, we're just going to run ahead with the scheme that the consultants are going to give us. And on the other hand, they're saying, we've got a nature emergency here, and they passed a special resolution. Well, you saw that. I mean, if that's not gross hypocrisy, I don't know what it is. It even made me go on Facebook the other day. I mean, have a look at it, because there's something really wrong with their wiring upstairs. Yes, please. Fourth, well, are all the components in the scheme credible? I've been saying all the way through this that yes, we need some barriers along the river and probably along the coast. The debate is what sort, how high, and when one puts them in. We've got to protect the properties, but we've got to protect people as well. We don't want deaths here. But they're saying, well, we've got to have them, and these are the heights. Have you noticed that the heights keep being reduced? You know, the mock-up I did outside my house with Richie and Ali's kids, it was 6'3". It's now down to here. You know, if I keep being awkward, are they playing a game with us? You know, I mean, this is serious. And the same with the trees, you know. Have you noticed how many trees are going to be felled now compared with June, compared with... It keeps changing. That's a good thing, isn't it? In some respects, because we've got them on the back foot. We're getting them nervous, but they're so arrogant that they are not prepared to admit that. And they say the bridges have to be replaced. And we've had long arguments about this. We don't even know how much that will cost. I just went, maybe 20 million. They never said that's not right. But it's going to be terribly disruptive. It's also going to be against the council's environmental policy because it's removing concrete. What are they going to build the bridges of? Concrete and steel. What are the two most energy-intensive forms of construction in the world? Now well proven, concrete and steel. And they haven't thought about how you adapt the bridges so that the big tree trunks will go past, float past. There's a bird word here, and these things are called starlings. You see this bridge here? It's a Roman bridge in Andalusia. And there are loads of bridges on the Thames and on many major rivers where you put a pointy bit, like the technical term, the pointy bit upstream. So you get the water to flow by and you get the trunks to flow by. And we want the trunks to flow by because we actually, from a natural point of view, want them to land on the beach and to get washed up, so they perform a little natural barrier along the top of the beach. And then what we can do, and this goes back to a nature solution, nature will, when it's calmer weather, pull sand over there, and if we plant some of the two main dune-building grasses, and do you know what dune-building grasses are like? They're like icebergs in their shape, because they're about that high above ground, but their massive root structure under the ground, it's just absolutely fantastic. They're called lime grass and barren grass. So we could use all of those. And we hope that the independent report being done by Dynamic Coast will cover all of that. But we're rather worried that we won't see that because this is a report to the council and they are very good at hiding data. I don't know whether there's anybody here from the consultants or the council, but I hope you're listening because there is an international treaty called Aarhus Treaty, and they're acting against that in terms of their inability to interact with the people and to release environmental information. And that's a really good challenge point. And they're not prepared to consider individual property solutions. My partner's been on the web and said, well, we could do ours ourselves. Not that we want to do that, but more particularly, one of the best natural river experts in Scotland said to me recently that property-based solutions paid for by the council have to be part of the package, along with some barriers along the coast as well as upstream. Wow, that's very powerful to me, given the international credibility of that person. And then we have the active travel consultation. I mean, nobody's seen that at the moment. There's some absolute nonsense in there. I'm a cyclist, but most people are walkers, you know, and it seems to be an anti-walker thing, and we're going to have a proposed bridge. Where are the river's over there, isn't it? Yeah, a bridge down by the river mouth, which from the natural movement of sediment, of material, would be the wrong place to put it, and it will really be harmful to the diurnal movement of birds. So note that. That will have to be subject to a formal assessment by Nature Scot, the government agency, to look at that and give their opinion. And finally, many of us feel that the decision-making is flawed. Christine's already mentioned this. Consultation is a buzzword, but as she said, it's low down on the scale of interaction. We now talk about partnership, we talk about collaboration, we're talking about people, i.e. us, as equal partners in this debate. That's what Scottish Government officials are saying. They're saying to me, look, what we would like to see in communities like Musselburgh is flood resilience groups. And that means groups of citizens working with the council and their advisors to look to the future and how we can do better. Well, we haven't got any of that here whatsoever. And we haven't got any options either. we were given a few options earlier this year, and there was some silent voting. We never knew what it was, and all of a sudden we got one scenario for the river and a different one for the coast. Nobody in a decision-making role, and there are lots of people in this room who have been in those roles, and that includes myself when I was in government and running a Wango, say, well, what are our choices here? Do we have options? But the council are going to be given, well, this is the solution. Well, that is not the right approach at all. That's 19th century practice, not 21st century. And every time we ask, well, who's going to mark the consultant's homework? Councillors and officials. Anybody want a beer? Councillors and officials, do you believe these people? What's their motivation for the contract? You know, Jacobs is one of the biggest engineering companies in the world, as I've already said. Who's checking them out? Are you sure, councillors and officials, that you're getting the best advice? Who's cross-checking it? They're marking their own homework, as we said. Something's seriously wrong. We're going to have to go back to the Auditor General for Scotland on that one for sure. And we hear that the council are going to make a decision sometime in January on the scheme. We, the affected people, are not going to get any chance to look at that at all. Well, that's a bloody disgrace, and that's been polite about it, isn't it? I think, you know, why aren't we being involved again? For deliberate put there, it's not only for people in Musselburgh. There are folk here today who don't live in Musselburgh, because what struck me most of all, and as I say, I've only been here 10.5 years, is so many people from out with the town love the town, and they come here because it's enjoyable, it's attractive, particularly the amenity by the river and along the coast. Next. So, yes, climate change is real. There's no doubt about that, and there is an added flood risk, and that will increase through the century. There's no doubt about it, but it won't be a steady increase. There will be big floods, big tides, and big storms on the coast. But we're not flooding now, so we're in a better position than lots of other communities around the country. So let's take our time to do this properly. I think nature's our lifeline. We either work with it or we try to mimic it. And we've got a lot of people in the town, quite fantastic, who know a lot about that. But most of all, we need to work with all of us. They need to work with us, not just talk at us and hear our answers to their questions, to hear our points of view. So, what's our vision for the town? I'll read this out because you maybe can't see it all. Let's use nature-based solutions throughout the catchment of the S, that's the whole area, 330,000 square kilometres. No, 30 square kilometres, I'm just exaggerating the size. So that the Musselburgh flood protection becomes an exemplar of new best practice. We should be the leaders, we should be proud. The honest town wins, you know? Protecting properties, yes. Enhancing our lives. We know how important this river is in getting out. You know, one thing that COVID taught us is getting outside was just amazing. And we can do that along the river. Providing value for public money, critical in a cost of living crisis. Improving amenity and helping us to address the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. Thank you.